Hi, my name is Jay Berman, the Entrepreneurial Mindset, and today's presentation is called Location, 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 Selecting a Retail Location for Your Store. The first thing I recommend is you start with a business plan in order to calculate your startup budget for your store. The most important part of a business plan in the financial section is the income statement, where you do your revenue or sales goals, your expenses, and your profit projections. If you're struggling with that part of your business plan, I recommend hiring a CPA. You need to think about financing, because starting your own retail store is going to require a fair amount of cash. So you'll need to go to a bank to get a commercial or construction loan, or you can go by way of investors. In other words, you, your family, maybe your friends, to raise the money for a retail store. You also need to consider the location of your retail store. Do you want to be in a shopping mall, a strip mall, maybe a downtown area that's busy, trendy, kind of quaint, touristy, or you may consider a standalone location. Now, with a retail store, it's all about the money. Money, money, money. In other words, you're going to need what we call construction capital, money needed to build out your store. So there are going to be a lot of people involved when it comes to opening a retail store. You're going to need an architect, a general contractor, and interior designer. You're also going to need working capital, which is defined as the money needed to operate your store. In other words, pay your expenses, such as the rent, if you have any employees, inventory, utilities, credit cards, loan payments, and taxes. When it comes to opening up a retail store, people. You're going to be involved with a lot of people. Probably the first person you need to talk to is a real estate broker. He or she specializes in locating retail and restaurant locations and estimating the monthly rent. You probably going to have to negotiate with the landlord. Now, just remember, landlords prefer well-known brands or chains because they well capitalized. They have a lot of money. Unless you have the money to open up a retail store, it's probably not a good idea to start talking with a real estate broker or a landlord. And also you will need a real estate attorney. He or she will help you negotiate your retail lease. Now, what is an architect and why an architect is important? An architect designs buildings, retail stores. They create concepts, they do sketches, blueprints, which is the drawing of your proposed store. They also manage the completion of construction projects, which includes budgets, schedules, and compliance with local ordinances and regulations. You're also going to need a general contractor. A general contractor provides construction cost estimates. They provide timelines for project completion, because, a retail store can take months or even years to complete. They obtain the necessary local permits. They hire construction workers, electricians, carpenters, roofers, plumbers, and HVAC technicians. They manage the job sites to ensure safety standards and workers' compensation. You'll also need to consider hiring an interior designer. An interior designer creates pleasing interior spaces so customers can easily navigate your store and examine your products. They recommend, things like the wall colors, the lighting fixtures, the flooring, carpeting, furniture, and of course the decor of your store. You'll also need an accountant, which provides services such as preparing financial statements, and they also provide pretty good advice on taxes and financing. You're going to have to work with the local government because they are in charge of the regulations regarding retail spaces, signage, zoning, and parking. And then, of course, your store, you probably can't manage the store by yourself, so you have to consider hiring employees, and they'll help you manage the store and, of course, assist with sales. And then, of course, customers, customers, customers. Your store is not going to succeed without customers. So you have to kind of, in your business plan, kind of determine the size of your ideal customer population that live near the location that you desire for your store. Because understand that people won't travel far unless your products are so unique and not easily available elsewhere. If you're picking a location, you should probably try to estimate what the foot traffic is going to be during the day and night. What is the safety crime situation in the area you want to locate? Is there convenient parking, preferably free parking or cheap city parking? And then, of course, what is the competition? Is your competition located nearby your desired store? And then, of course, there's the lease. Very, very important. Landlords usually prepare what they call the letter of interest, LOI, which provides the key terms or elements of the lease negotiation. That's why it's probably a good idea to hire a real estate attorney. Landlords usually prepare their own leases unless the tenant is a major corporation, which then they use their own leases. Major corporations usually have their own location specialists. So what are the components of a lease? Well, a lease is a contract, a civil contract between a tenant and a landlord. The most important part of the lease, of course, is what is the rent, the payment per month, and what is the term in terms of months or years. So is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 36 months? Is it 60 months? Cost of living index. A lot of leases, there'll be a cost of index which entitles the landlord to an annual rent increase. You will have to put down a security deposit in order to secure the location. You will have to provide a personal guarantee. In other words, you are personally liable for the rent if you close your store. Even if you have an LLC, the landlord will demand a personal guarantee in case you go bankrupt. You're still on the hook for the remaining lease payments. There's also provision in leases that called replacement. You may be liable for some of the remaining rent, even if the landlord finds another tenant. So let's say your store does go bankrupt, and let's say you were paying $1,000 a month rent, but now the landlord gets a new tenant, they're paying $750 a month in rent. The landlord can still demand you pay the additional $250 until your original lease is paid off. There's also a termination option. There's one for the tenant. In other words, it gives you the right to terminate the lease, provided you make a prepayment and rent in addition to the security deposit. You must give the landlord several months' notice so the landlord can find a new tenant. The landlord also can have a termination option. In other words, the landlord has the right to terminate your lease in the event the landlord finds a tenant willing to pay a higher rent. So you could be evicted even though you signed the lease if that termination option that favors the landlord is in the lease. You might be required to pay common area costs. So what are those? It's the parking lot upkeep, it's the elevators, it's the hallways, it's the restrooms, heating, cooling, lighting. There are two types of leases. One is a gross lease. In other words, the rent you pay with no additional charges, so you don't have to pay common area costs. It's part of your rent payment, your lease payment. Now, there could be also what we call a net lease. The rent you pay plus additional charges, such as the common area costs I just mentioned, insurance, real estate taxes, utilities for heating, cooling, and lighting of the common areas. Oh, and then here are some important shopping trends. Are people buying in shopping malls, strip malls, and downtowns? Or maybe it's better strategy be maybe be a wholesaler instead of it being a retailer. In other words, a wholesaler sells to existing retailers instead of being a retailer yourself. Or perhaps you can start an e-commerce store. In other words, you sell products online and you ship the products to customers. You might find those two business models a lot cheaper than starting a retail store. Anyway, that's the end of my presentation on location, location, location. Any questions or comments, please use the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel for more entrepreneurial content, and thank you for watching.